So did you guys know that angels are not specific to the Abrahamic faiths? All those images of angels that you normally see, those winged people looking all pretty and delivering messages and stuff, yeah, nope. That is not what angels were always thought to be. And in fact, one book that I really do like, Angels and Archangels by Damien Eccles, has actually a kind of Babylonian angel on it. There are many different types of angels, and we're going to talk about just a few of them that kind of center in a region that we are familiar with. So, let's get into it. By the way, if you want to see these videos 2 weeks earlier, consider subscribing to my Patreon, where you not only get all these videos, but also recipe cards, specific deity profiles, and lots of other interesting things to look at. Video tiers start at $10 a month, so definitely consider checking it out. So now the word angel comes from the Greek angelos, which means messenger, right? And it is translated also out of the Hebrew malach, which is literally just angel, right? Like malachim is just means angels, right? Plural. So it really literally is just someone who brings messages to and from the gods. And that can be kind of anybody, right? So that definition is too broad for us to work with, and that's why I said we're going to look at them specifically in this one Near Eastern region, even though we could absolutely ascribe the term messenger to, like, say, the foxes of Inari in Shintoism. That's kind of outside the bounds of what we are looking for when we think of angels, right? So let's keep it here in the Near East, and let's talk about it. And seriously, even in just Abrahamic religions, delivering messages is not all they do, right? Like, of course, we see angels being messengers of God. They're the ones who tell Abraham and Sarah that they're going to have a child. They're the ones that tell Hagar that she's going to have a child that has many nations spring out of him, all this kind of thing. They deliver messages all the time. But they also do a lot of crazy stuff. Like, a lot of crazy stuff, right? If we look at the Book of Tobit, we got Raphael kind of leading Tobias along and trolling the hell out of Asmodeus. We have the 7 Watchers who watch all of humanity and who actively fight fallen angels. And, we've got Michael who jails fallen angels in Sheol. We have Gabriel who's doing that traditional messenger role. We've got Zadkiel, we've got Ariel, we've got all these fighter angels. We've got the angels that wreck Sodom and Gomorrah. We've got the angels that, are flaming eyeball wheels that carry God's throne around. There are a lot of different ones just in the Abrahamic religions, and especially in Judaism, that we could talk about that alone all day. But we're trying to get through a broad overview of different ones. So in the Abrahamic religions, right, we do see that they're kind of figured differently, right? Just in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, we do have some differences. And one of those is that in, say, Christianity, the angel Azrael, the archangel of death, actually doesn't exist. Usually it's Michael or Uriel who takes over his role. But in Judaism and also in Islam, there is Azrael, right? There is that angel of death. However, in Christianity, we do get a bit of a different angelology, where we have these 9 choirs of angels. And so, obviously, the Malachim, right, those regular angels, they're at the very bottom, most basic level angel, and those are the ones that our guardians will usually come from. Our guardian angels are usually of that caste, assigned to us personally to follow us around and make sure we don't get totally destroyed, right? On the highest is the archangels, and these are the ones that have the names everyone knows. Michael, Gabriel, Zadkiel, all of these different angels. In between are different layers, like the dominions, the principalites, the virtues, who all have very different roles on Earth. Some of the most obvious and recognizable angels are in the actually very top 3, right? So you've got your archangels, which are mostly seraphim with the 6 wings. They have 2 to fly, 2 to cover their face, and 2 to cover their feet. Then the next are the, I believe the Ophanim are next. The Ophanim are those thrones. Those are the wheels with the eyes that carry the chariot of God around. And that are big carriers of justice. And then we have the cherubim, and these are the ones that guard Eden, right? These are the ones that have 4 faces, and they walk very specifically in certain directions. So, like, they'll never turn their bodies to walk. They literally just, one face walks this way, the next face walks that way, because they have faces on all sides of their head. They never need to turn. They're already looking at everything. But then you have other angels that are dedicated to moving the celestial bodies. You have ones that are dedicated to overseeing literally entire countries or cities or, just states of mankind. And frankly, the 9 choirs of angels themselves could be an entire video, so we're not going to get too deep into it, but in Christian angelology, they are separated this way to kind of organize who they are. The angels themselves don't really care for this kind of hierarchy system, though. Like, they don't really see it as harshly as we do and as strictly as we do. They just do the jobs that they're meant to do, but we organize them this way because there are a lot of them and it's easier to think about them in these 9 castes. But what's interesting is that in my conversations with the angels and in the work that I do with them, I found that I conceptualize angels in a way that may have been closer to the original Hebrew idea of them. In my purview, because all of these angel names, they end with El or something of the sort or something similar, they have names that mean like things of God, right? Like Michael is he who is like God, and Uriel is God is my light. They have these aspects, they have names that suggest being aspects of God. As we all know, God is infinite and multifaceted, so the idea that these angels are simply outer manifestations of these specific aspects of him, or they are beings who wear these aspects like masks through their name, it's not too far off. And the reason I say masks is specifically because, did you know that Zadkiel and Sachiel are actually the same angel, but with radically different functions? So Zadkiel was the one who kind of saved Isaac from getting sacrificed, right? When Abraham was told to sacrifice his son, he is the angel of mercy. He also fights alongside Michael. And yet, when you call on him as Sachiel, all of a sudden he is an angel of fortune and wealth, which is very different from his original office being an angel of mercy. And yet, this is the same angel, which to me suggests something that these angels can kind of wear these names, right? Like crowns or titles, like masks. And in doing so, they are a separate entity that just kind of takes on these divine names and these divine forms. And it's actually not until we get into a more Babylonian or Zoroastrian perspective, according to some scholars, that angels start to be understood as their own separate beings from God completely. I view them as creations of God wearing masks, but there are many different ways to look at angels, so let's get into now away from Abrahamic and into some other interesting ones. So Zoroastrianism is a religion that, in fact, predates Judaism a bit, right? When you think about it, Judaism seems like such an old religion to us, but is actually pretty young in the grand scheme of things. Before Judaism, there were all these other religions going on. There was Zoroastrianism, there were the other religions of the Sumerians and the Akkadians, and the Canaanite religion that later gets tussled around in the Bible. All of these religions existed before Judaism spawned, right? Before God of Israel became kind of this big deal in that area. And a quick pause here because this needs to be said continuously. This doesn't mean Judaism stole anything from these religions. I cannot say this clearly enough. The concept of syncretism is and has always been a core way of making religions operate. I mean, no one claims that the Greeks stole Thoth, right? No one claims that, and yet here we have Hermes Trismegistus rolling around, being a figure that was quite literally the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth smashed together. Greeks seem to think that everyone had the same gods, just in different names and different forms. So they were constantly smashing their gods with foreign gods to make these kind of amalgamations and syncretize beliefs so that everyone could kind of worship together regardless of where they came from. That's syncretism. And of course, because Judaism did not evolve in a vacuum, it didn't come literally out of nowhere, it's going to have these influences of systems that came before it to inform its new systems and its new structure, right? So it's not that Judaism stole anything, it's just that they already had some base templates to work with because they didn't walk off a spaceship and come up with all of their ideas out of literally thin air. And we can see that here again in Zoroastrianism, right? So there are a few different classes of angels, and we're going to look at 3. And in those classes, we can see some parallels between the 7 watchers, the 7 archangels of Judaism, and by extension, all Abrahamic faiths, and also the 7 top angels of Zoroastrianism. So in Zoroastrianism, there is this supreme creator god Ahura Mazda, and this god created the Amesha Spenta, which are they're basically big personifications of topics, right? So we've got these angels that are, presiding over cattle, presiding over fire, over the earth, over the waters. They are, big, guardian, massive, immortal beings whose entire purpose is to make sure that the earth functions the way it needs to function, and that order is kept in the world, that matter and material reality is not spinning off into chaos. And their names mean things like holy devotion or perfection or health, right? So they mean these specific things that people were looking for. They are big personifications of these different ideas, right? And they very closely help Ahura Mazda. So think of how the archangels are God's right-hand man, Michael is his right-hand man, and all these angels are the highest angels, and they are the most important, they do the most work. That's kind of what these angels are here in Zoroastrianism too. There are the Yazatas, which are smaller personifications, they're angels that personify smaller topics that still help humanity and are still benevolent overall, but they're not as powerful as the 7. And then there are the Fravashi, which are the guardian angels, right? Everyone has a guardian, and you're supposed to kind of pray to them and, offer them things in return for their protection and their, loyalty to you. For the most part, those 7 are very much important to the main creator deity, just as the 7 watchers are in Judaism. There's kind of a parallel there with that number 7. Beyond that, there are other tiny little angels that just kind of go around doing the same thing that Christian angels might, right? Where it's you got your guardians, and then you've got all these different kinds and these other castes that go around doing a bunch of different stuff. Now, another extremely fascinating place angels show up is in the religion of Yezidism, and Yezidism is so cool. It is another monotheistic religion, and in fact, it actually does share a lot of the story of Judaism, right? It talks about Adam. It has a lot of these, elements we might recognize from the Abrahamic faiths, but they have a slightly different understanding of God. So for them, God is someone who really doesn't care about the world or what happens to it. He kind of pieced out and went on vacation and let the 7 angels instead watch the world for him. And so one of those angels you may have heard of before is called Melek. He is the peacock angel, and he's thought to be one manifestation of this creator god, right? So Yazidism also does understand their god to be kind of like a triune form, where there's God, there's this angel, and then there's, I believe, someone who is more of a prophet figure. And so in this situation, this angel kind of becomes a spokesperson for God, becomes the head of all of these 7 angels, and he is frequently cognated with Azrael or Azrael in Islam. And a lot of them have very similar names to the Jewish angels, right? So when we have from the black scripture of Yazidism, we have a, kind of overview of what was created. So it says, in the beginning, God created the white pearl from his kind essence and a dove, calling him Anfar, and put that pearl on him and stayed there 40,000 years. Sunday, day 1 of creation, God has created an angel, called him Azrael, that was Melek, who is the leader of all. On Sunday, God created the angel Dardael, who is Sheikh Hassan, relative and follower of Sheikh Aden bin Musafir. On Tuesday, he created the angel Israfil, who is the Sheikh Shams, identified with the sun. On Wednesday, he created the angel Mikael, who is Sheikh Abu Bakr, or Sheikh Abu Bakr. And on Thursday, he created the angel Jibrail, who is Sijadin. So there's a couple more after that, but as you can see, Mikael, Azrael, Jibrail, these are very similar names to some of the ones of the Watchers. Michael, Gabriel, Azrael. Nothing's made in a vacuum, as I said. Unfortunately, a lot of people think Yazidis worship the devil because they believe that Melek is actually the devil and the one that did bad stuff with the apple in Eden, and so they think Yazidis worship this evil deity, and that's not the case. That has caused so much strife and oppression and horrible human rights abuses against Yazidi people, who are very peaceful people and very interesting in their philosophies, their churches, and are literally just trying to live. So the idea that other religions have demonized this Melek and literally just kind of used that as a placeholder for Satan and a justification to abuse them is very, very bad. And it's still happening to today, which is extremely unfortunate. But moving on to other parts of the world, so when looking at Sikhism, Sikhism is another religion that is monotheistic, has one god, and I thought that there would be angels in this religion, and yet not really. The most that there really is in this religion is angelos, which seems to be a syncretic influence. It seems that close contact with Muslim traders and things brought the angel of death over into Sikh scriptures, which is really interesting. And so they don't really have a concept of angels otherwise. In fact, they have a idea of demons that I really align with, for instance, in which that angels and demons are just personifications of human qualities. So obviously angels are the really good qualities, like love and peace and charity. Demons, the not so good qualities, laziness, malice, right, jealousy. And that's kind of how I perceive demons too. The low-ranking demons. Demons are things that at the very least capitalize on these feelings we have of like anger or envy or sloth and just aggravate the hell out of them. And the last one I want to talk about is Greek religion, right? Coming full circle back to Greeks over here, but Greeks didn't really have, despite the word angelos coming from Greek, they didn't have the same idea of angels as we now have with the winged people doing winged people stuff, right? For them, there was more just the daimones, which obviously you can see etymologically this word daimone becomes the Christian demon, right? Because as Christianity started flourishing and started becoming the official religion some few centuries into its inception, they did really just say that any spirit that wasn't the Holy Spirit or God or whatever was an evil demon. But a daimone was something very much like a guardian angel in some cases, like say with Socrates. There are some people that say that Socrates had magical powers because he had an ability to actually really communicate with this daimon, who would, kind of counsel him and tell him not to do certain things so that he wouldn't get his ass beat. However, when it comes to the daimones, it's actually more that they are personifications. So in the rank of gods and celestial beings, the Olympic gods are like up here, the daimones are here, right? And so a Greek god is Hades, right? Hades, who is lord of the underworld. A daimones is actually, one of the daemons is actually Thanatos, who is a personification of death. So yes, they can be understood as gods, like we have the goddess of discord, Eris. That is a daemon. She is a personification of discord. Hypno, right? He is the personification of sleep. So yes, they can be worshipped as gods, and they definitely can be seen as gods, but they're not quite on the same level, I guess, as some of these other Olympic gods, or as the one high invisible god that was also present in this religion. They're kind of somewhere definitely higher than people, but not quite like at the rank of god, I guess, Still, they could absolutely mediate between divinity and between people, and so they did count as angels in that sense. They were messengers. They, like the muses would help people be inspired to make great music. These would also, deliver messages and things like that. So they did have a function as an angel. Maybe not quite the way we understand them, but they did function that way. And they did also have evil counterparts, right? So in Christianity, if you think of an angel and a fallen angel, there was a daimon and then a kakodemon, which was an evil spirit or a trickster or someone that was just up to no good, right? A spirit that was really nasty and not great. But I think this discussion's really interesting because, as you can see, when you start looking at these other concepts of angels, especially in this specific Near Eastern area, you can see how a lot of them overlap, and you can understand that there is, more to the story of religion than we are traditionally told, right? We kind of always just take for granted that, here come the Israelites. We don't really ever ask what happens before Abraham. We don't really look into Abraham's parents or grandparents or other family members who were very clearly doing some other stuff, worshiping different gods, having different ideas of who these gods were. We aren't looking at the many other cultures that were growing side by side with the Israelites, right? The Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, all these other people who had their own idea of angels already, who had their own magic systems, who had their own idea of even monotheism. It's through angels, a little bit, that we can understand how, some religions drew on other ones to get these ideas, to discover these things. And again, this is just a brief overview. This isn't a long and hard, deep dive into any of these, but I do hope that it gave you some jumping off points to look into things more yourself if you are interested in the Zoroastrian angels or in the angels of Yazidism. By all means, go look. I found some really interesting stuff, in just like scholarly articles about Melek that I'm personally really interested in. So, with all that said, I hope this has been interesting for you, and I'll see you guys next week for our Saint of the Month.